I'm
That,
Brian Thompson. Oh, yes.
that was
I'm
good
Brian.
filler.
Stop it. Okay, so as you can tell, the meeting is being recorded. If you have any issues with that, I'm not sure what you can do, but it is being recorded.
Leave.
I'm Brian Thompson. I'm from Victoria. I'll be your MC today with Jennifer Campbell in Winnipeg, Keith Newell in Victoria, and Ian Fisher in Port Coquitlam, which I think is the craft brew center of at least the Lower Mainland. So I will turn it over to Jennifer to do the agenda. Sorry, for today is to talk about the new shoe rule and to give you the results of the survey that we did. Thank you all for the feedback you gave us, and then preferences for our next meeting. Just 3 items: the shoe rule, feedback on the survey, and the next meeting. So as we mentioned, this is being recorded, and I think it's easier if you turn your video off and the mute off, just to avoid any issues, but we will turn it back on for questions. With that in mind, I'll turn it over to Jennifer and you can do the introductions.
Today we have our NOC chair and an ITO who is leaving for Japan very shortly. Jane Edstrom is going to do the World Athletics shoe rule number 5, and give us I think a 12 to 13 slideshow presentation. So over to you, Jane, and thank you for doing this for us.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for inviting me to be with you this evening. And thanks all for attending. Just to begin with, just a little background on the shoe rule, why it came into being. At the Rio Olympics, it was noticed that especially distance races, times were dropping drastically, and they kind of narrowed it down to the shoes that were being worn, and they are putting a layer of carbon fiber in the sole of the shoe, and the carbon fiber has to be cushioned on either side to protect the athlete, and a special form of rubber is used. And it was decided that well, actually this gave sort of a recoil effect to the athlete, so every time they hit the pavement, the shoe kind of helped them pop up again. And times were dropping, as I say, between Rio and Tokyo last summer. World Athletics thought they need to level the playing ground for all athletes to ensure that if this indeed was assisting athletes, that it was available to all athletes. So this is sort of where the rules started. And they have since then, so they put a few rules in place before the Tokyo Olympics that were supposed to happen last summer. Since then, they have formulated a working group that has scientists, researchers, shoe manufacturers, coaches, athletes, a myriad of people on this working group to really look at the shoe rule. And you can be assured that after the Tokyo Olympics, there will definitely be some revisions. The shoe rule will be taken out of the rule book. It's a special document unto itself. And if you go on the World Athletics website, you will see the shoe rule, technical rule 5, is listed by itself, simply because it's evolving. And to like continually update the rule book with this one rule, I'm not sure the rule book can keep up with it. So that's sort of where it's coming from. And once the rule was put out there, Athletics Canada asked the National Officials Committee to form some guidelines for the implementation of the rule in Canada. So a subcommittee was formed, and what I'm going to share with you tonight, and you've already seen in the newsletter, are the guidelines for implementation of the rule in Canada. A little bit of a preamble about technical rule 5 is the shoe must not give the athlete any unfair assistance or advantage. Any type of shoe must be reasonably available to all in the spirit of universality of athletics. For international competitions at which an athlete proposes to wear a shoe that has not previously been used, an international sorry, I got a new mouth tonight apparently. In international competition, the athlete or athlete representative must submit to World Athletics the specifications, and that includes like the shoe size, the dimensions, the sole thickness, structure, etc. Of the new shoe. Confirm if the new shoe has been customized in any way, and provide information about the availability of the new shoe on the open retail market. So you can have shoes made for you personally, but then they have to be available to everybody. The World Athletics rule, technical rule 5, as it applies to shoes, covers international competitions and competitions sanctioned by member federations where it is decided that the rules and regulations shall apply. Athletics Canada has taken the position these rules and regulations shall apply to all competitions held in Canada, regardless of the age or the level of the athlete. And really, World Athletics set this rule, or really the focus of this rule is for elite competition of U20 or senior athletes, but Athletics Canada has taken the stance that it's be for everybody. The intent of the rule: the shoes are to be used in competition, shoes to be used in a competition must be on the World Athletics list or be a legacy or vintage model that complies with the World Athletics Technical Rule 5. And this compliance list, just for your information, is being published once a week, and it will be published once a week up until the start of the Olympics. Happens to be released usually on a Monday. So today a new list was published, and I'm sure next Monday another new list will be published so that they get as many of those shoes on that list as they possibly can before the Olympics. Shoes must be available on the open market 4 months prior to use. Shoes must be within the World Athletics Technical Rule 5, specified sole and heel thicknesses. And if you look in the rule, there's a little chart that has sole thicknesses for each of the events. There's field events, there's triple jump, there's road races, there's track races, and it depends on the length of the track race as to the sole thickness. The shoe rule is applicable to elite athletes in elite competitions. Rule clarification from World Athletics states that the rule is to be enforced for U20 and senior national championships, as well as any World Athletics or NACAC or label events. All associations and all associates of Athletics Canada are subject to compliance with this rule. How to enforce? Athletics Canada is to ensure that Rule 5 is enforced, they want to wildly communicate. And I know I have spoken to branch presidents across the country. I was on a panel probably a month ago with researchers, a couple of coaches, and athletes and coaches attended this panel. And so we're trying to get the word out there, because our goal is not to penalize athletes. It's to make them aware that this rule exists, and to make sure that all of their competition performances are legal and fair. Athletes are responsible for checking the World Athletics website for the compliance list and ensure that the shoes are included on the list, their shoes are included on the list or are otherwise compliant with technical rule 5. Some of the, like we mentioned before, the vintage shoes or the really old shoes, those are probably compliant because they don't have that layer of carbon fiber or all that cushioning in them. But again, we still have to worry about number of spikes and spike length, etc. Entry forms for national championships for U20 and senior athletics or athletes are to have a declaration on them, shoe declaration on them. And I was just on the World Athletics website yesterday, and they now have a special shoe declaration form on the website that athletes have to fill out for the Olympics or the World Championships, as well as world records. Now you have to declare your shoe. If you were to break a world record, you also have to declare what shoes you wore. Like an athlete would have to, in shot put or discus or one of the throws, the implement has to be compliant. At the competition, the athlete or the representative must present shoes to be worn in the competition to the Technical Information Center prior to the competition. And we put this clause in so that in the case that when TIC checks the shoe compliance list and an athlete's shoes aren't on that list, then the athlete has some time to go and buy some new shoes. If they show up at the call room, I mean, minutes before their competition, and their shoes are found to be non-compliant, they're not going to have any time to buy some new shoes. And once again, our goal is not to disqualify athletes or omit them. It's to make sure that they're competition ready. If the shoes are, oh, just maybe somebody's joining. Yes. If shoes are on the World Athletics compliance list or are otherwise compliant with the technical rule 5, they can be used. Athletes must still report to the call room and present their shoes for thorough inspection prior to the event. If the shoes are not on the World Athletics compliance list, they and are otherwise not compliant, they cannot be used in the competition. Prior to the event, in the meet call room, the shoes will be inspected for the number of spikes, length, width, type of spikes, sole and heel thicknesses, and cross-checked on the World Athletics compliance list. Athletes must comply with any request from referees, whether it be an NTO, an AITO, or an ITO, to inspect their shoes. And that can even be after they've competed. At the end of the race, if the referee suspects that the shoes are non-compliant, they may ask to inspect the shoes. It is not permitted to run under protest with non-compliant shoes. Like, it's just, you have to have compliant shoes. Now, what does this, what does a call room need then for measurement? The sole and heel calipers to measure the sole and heel thicknesses are in the process of being developed for use in Canada. And I know with COVID problems, a lot of the shops and whatever have been closed. And also some of the shops have had problems getting metal, and the cost of metal has really gone sky high during COVID. So we're still in the process of developing these calipers and trying them to make sure that they're what we need to measure the sole and heel thicknesses. Spike gauges have been in use to measure the spike length, and then also they must fit through a square-sided 4mm gauge. The World Athletics shoe compliance list is on the on the World Athletics website. And once again, it needs to be updated. It is updated weekly. So the most recent one should be referred to. What are the sanctions and penalties for this rule? If an athlete or a representative fails to present their shoes to TIC as outlined, and the shoes are found to be non-compliant, there is no opportunity to compete. If an athlete competes with non-compliant shoes or is deemed to have done so after the fact, the referee may disqualify the athlete after the event. And that's according to competition rule 512. An athlete who is found to have contravened the rule and is liable to retroactive disqualification and removal of the performance claimed for records, rankings, standards. And once again, I have to repeat, our goal in life is not to take away performances from athletes, but to ensure that it's a fair competition and that they are knowledgeable to the rules, and we don't have to deal with the sanctions and the penalties. But World Athletics is very clear on this. If they competed in non-compliant shoes, then the records, rankings, and standards will not be recognized.
Jane, just a quick point on that first bullet on the previous page is it should be
Sure.
an or. It should be as outlined and the shoes. It should be as outlined or the shoes.
Sorry, if an athlete or representative fails to present their shoes to TIC as outlined,
Or the shoes.
and or the shoes are found to be, sure.
No.
For competitions held in Canada, including off-track events, it is an expectation that the shoe regulations be followed for all athletes. In the absence of a formal call room, officials may perform spot checks to ensure compliance with the rule. And I know in some of the road races where you have a massive number of competitors, it's the elite athletes that we're really looking at. And the stacked shoes, you can visually see. And so if a referee were to see some shoes that they were questioning as to the legality of them, then they should check them, well, hopefully before the competition so that something can be done about them, but after if need be. For combined events, call room judges will check event shoes in the combined events restroom prior to each event, because a call room usually only checks in the first event of a combined event, and then the athletes go back and forth from the restroom. And we all know that there's 10 different events in a decathlon, and the athletes have a number of different pairs of shoes that they wear for the complete combined events. A similar rule exists for World Para Athletics, and it happens to be Rule 6.2. So when there is a mixed competition, that means a para and a able-bodied competition or similar, the rules need to be enforced for both groups. So this is applicable to para athletes also. World Athletics Athletics Canada and NOC are mandating that the World Athletics Shoe Rule number 5 be observed at all domestic competitions and enforced through shoe declarations and inspections at national championships for U20 and senior athletes, as well as any World Athletics NACAC permit or label events. In regard to provincial and territorial championships, NOC recommends that athletes be made aware that there is a shoe compliance list, that they are aware that there is a shoe rule, And especially if they are attempting a standard for a national championship, they should be well aware of this, this rule and its ramifications. It's recommended that provincial and territorial championships entry forms have that shoe declaration for U20 and seniors, so that it's not a surprise when they go to national championships that certain shoes may or may not be worn. Sorry, I just lost my cursor. Oh, and now we missed this one. So if you would like to unmute yourself, if you've got a question, maybe Brian and or Jennifer can assist with any questions that the group might have. Or you can put your hand up, either way.
Or chat.
It's Pat March here.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, I just have one quick question for you, Jane. Under the sanctions and penalties where it says if they're found, the shoes are found to be non-compliant, there's no opportunity to compete. Not to say that they would, but would the athlete have an option to go barefoot?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Sorry, I mean, we're trying to emphasize to them, if they brought them to TIC ahead of time and we found that they weren't on the shoe compliance list, then they have a chance to go out and buy a new pair. They have a chance to borrow from somebody. They have a chance to do something. 5 minutes before the competition in the call room, if that's the first time that anybody from the track gets to see them, see these shoes, it's a little late to be running around trying to find shoes. But yes, you can compete barefoot with one shoe on, with one shoe off, or they could borrow from another athlete. I mean, there's many different options, but within time constraints.
Right, okay. I just wanted to check that because it said there was no opportunity to compete, but there is if they do some of those. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Sure.
Jane, we have George in Newfoundland with a question. It says,
Sure.
will the shoe rule be enforced at the Legion Nationals?
Well, I don't think Legions is happening this year, so not this year. But we want the athletes to be aware of the rule. I don't know if, well, Athletics Canada wanted it to be enforced at all levels. Once again, the intent of the rule was mainly for U20s and seniors and elite competitors. That's all I can say.
Okay. So George, if you have any follow-up, just type it into chat. In the meantime, Mandy had her hand up next. Mandy?
Yeah. Okay, I'm not muted. Okay. I just wanted to check. In Quebec, we've been starting to, we have people that will get their running shoes at Walmart or the Skechers, like runners, but their heel is much too thick. What do we do with these people? If they don't have the carbon shoe, but their heel is like hugely thick.
And what age group is this? Sorry, Mandy, I can't hear you.
Short distance. Okay, we had all age groups. You can't hear me, I think, yeah?
Now I can, yes.
Okay.
The first time I would allow them to
Okay.
compete because they're so young, but then you got to tell them that there is a specification of what you can and can't wear. And they should be aware of that and start getting shoes that are compliant.
Oh, super. That's what we've been doing. Okay, so thank you.
It's kind of like the use in starting blocks, or you kind of have a sliding range for false starts with the younger kids. You know, it's an unsteady start.
Yeah.
And but they should know the rule, you know, after the first time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay.
One time and you're out. Okay, I think Valerie had her hand up next. Valerie Gordon?
Hi there. I'm just looking on the World Athletics, like the information page. So it lists every shoe and it's a yes, whether it can be used, and a no. Is that the correct understanding?
There's, I don't know if you're actually looking at it. There's quite an extensive chart there. There's the shoemaker, let's say Nike or Adidas or ASICS. There's the shoe model,
Yeah.
and it's an extensive list. And yes, it's compliant, or you don't make the list if you're not compliant.
Okay, so if it says no under track from 800, it means they can't use that shoe for that event.
Right, right,
Okay.
because there's different, well, I've got it right here, I'll tell you. Where is the 800? For some reason or other, for the longer distance, you're allowed yes, 800 and above, you're allowed a 25 millimeter shoe. And the rest of the track events are only allowed a 20.
20. Okay. And then the shoe you were talking about that seemed to kind of cushion and spring, is that obvious from looking at the shoe? Or is that we'll just have to go by the thickness?
No, it can be used. It's just if they've got too much cushioning or a double layer of carbon fiber, then it's not legal.
So we're
And
just
if
looking at the, sorry, we're just looking at the thickness of the sole or the heel.
Right, and if it has a double layer of carbon fiber, World Athletics knows that because they've cut these shoes down the length to get a cross section. They already know what the shoe is made of. That's how they decide whether it's compliant or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Valerie. Heather had her hand up next.
Yeah, so this is Heather Kleiman-Haga. I see a logistics nightmare in the call room with looking at these shoes from the point of view of just getting it done. Have the shoes been looked at as possibly being treated as an implement so that the shoes are assessed separate? And then once they're assessed and found legal, they could be put in a sealed bag with some kind of quality control label on it that is then broken at the point of competition, and that they warm up and train in another shoe. Because if we're going to have to measure every shoe of runners, it's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, Heather, first of all, the easy thing is it on the compliance list or not? And that's checked ahead of time. And then they need to warm up in the shoe that they're going to be wearing, like on the track. So to ask them for them, too far in advance, it's, I think, a disadvantage to the athlete.
Yeah, no, I see that. Okay, but so you're really not anticipating us having to measure thickness of soles of all the runners? It's going to be an eyeball, but we're still going to be looking at all the shoes?
Yes, but I mean, you're looking at the shoes anyways, because you're checking how many spikes they have. You're checking the length of the spikes. You're checking the width of the spikes. So, I mean, you've already got them in your hand, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, the number of people who go, golly gee, I didn't know that my spike was illegal, or I didn't know my orthotic was too thick. And these are at, the Olympic trials. So
It's the rule. We have to enforce it.
No,
Yes.
I get you. It's quite interesting, that's all I'm saying. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Heather. So I've got next to the list is Catherine, followed by David, who doesn't have a hand, and Keith Newell. We'll go to Catherine. You're unmuted. Good. Over to you, Catherine.
Yes, I guess my question is similar to Heather, just in terms of a clarification. So are we having every athlete now present their shoes to the tech? Is that my understanding of what you're saying? Like, whereas they didn't do that before at all?
No, they didn't before, no.
Oh, I know, but I mean, now is every single athlete in the competition presenting their shoes to the tick?
Initially, that's what our thought was. If their shoe is if they've declared their shoe on the entry form, then they're also, a part of that shoe declaration is that they have checked that their shoe is compliant. And TIC, it's just a quick double check to make sure that, once again, once the athlete shows up for the race, we don't want to find 5 minutes before they go out for their final that their shoes aren't compliant.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just confused about, you know, the tick part, because let's say we have, you know, a national championship and we have 100 athletes. Are we now taking 500 shoes to the tick, which we never ever did before? So I'm just wondering the logistics. Is that what we're doing? We're taking, every athlete has to bring their shoes to the tick, which is a whole new dimension for the tick. That's what I'm kind of confused about here. Still not clear on that.
Initially, that's what our thought was.
So this is going
Yes.
to be something that at a national championship, we're going to have to really rethink the tick. Whereas, we might only have a few people. We're going to need like a dozen people checking shoes in the tick.
Right, and this is like a number of days before, well, not a number, a couple of days before they actually compete. So you would have some time. Because you
Is
also,
there,
you
has
also
there
want to
some
get,
thought, has some thought been put to like, so when we weigh implements in the tick, then they get a mark or something like that? I mean, how are we going to, how is the tick going to mark or verify or those shoes? Like a javelin or a shot gets a mark on it somehow? What are we doing? with shoes?
they're just checking whether the shoes are on the compliance list. They're not checking sole and heel thickness. They're doing an
Oh,
initial
okay.
check because the call room is doing the final check.
And also, if you want to add something in the Jane comment that at national championship, what we're going to be asked the athlete when they will register on the website, we'll ask them to put on the shoe mark or the shoe thing on the registration form.
I guess what happens is, so, where's the verification for the call room? So an athlete comes in and says, oh, my shoes, they said in the tick they were fine.
No, Catherine.
No.
And in TIC, all they're doing is they're checking the shoe compliance list. And so my Nike model, whatever, is on that list. But then I put a insole in my shoe. And that's where the call room says, no, your shoe is compliant according to the list, but it is not compliant according to Rule 5 because your sole thickness is too thick and you have added an insole in the shoe, which is not legal.
Okay.
So once again, it's an initial check in TIC and the final check is in the call room.
Okay. And I know somebody had put in the chat too, do we know that if the World Masters is also adopting the whole shoe rule?
That's a great question. And that question also came up from the branch presidents. And sorry, I'm not up to date with World Masters rules. So I can't answer that one.
I'll ask Brian on the weekend.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, we'll pass it to David, who has a question.
It's actually more of a comment, and Ian Fisher might be able to provide a bit more data on it. But we had at the Jerome Track Classic, which is a silver labeled event, we had an athlete show up with shoes that were compliant in terms of they were on the list, but they were on the list for off track. It was a race walker, and the race walker only brought his off track racing flats, not his on track ones. So they didn't meet the requirements. And the discussion between the track referee and myself as a technical delegate was that the shoes were not going to be an advantage to the athlete, given the type of shoe that it was, and therefore the athlete was allowed to compete. And it was a unique situation without a doubt. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Ian.
No, Brian, or no, that you've covered it pretty well.
The result was that the athlete did compete, but ended up being disqualified for a technical rule under race walking. He ended up with 4 red cards, 1 red card after he had served a 1-minute penalty in the penalty zone.
Okay, thanks, David. The next one was a question that was a comment that Catherine raised that Bill has put it into text chat here about it's regarding orthotics, medically prescribed.
illegal.
What's the implications? If you got a medical prescription for orthotics and it takes you over, I guess if it takes you over the limit, you're over the limit.
Mhm.
I'll let Jennifer answer that one because she's the queen of the call room.
They're illegal, can't use them. You've added height and stuff through that, so we would ask them, the athlete has to take them out for the competition, whether it's a field event or if it's a track event.
Okay, there's no therapeutic form equivalent for having
No.
orthotics.
No.
Okay.
If it's medication, then that's a different story. That comes under TUE. But for shoes, no, it says in the rule book, there is no extra support allowed.
I think
Okay.
orthotics are not really a medical thing. It's an option that people use. I don't think you
Yeah.
could really classify it as a medically prescribed kind of thing, unless in para where somebody has, you know, a particular adaptation to their shoe. I think that's allowed, but
That's allowed, yes. But we would get notified by that,
Mhm.
about that athlete.
Okay. And David also complements that with they could just remove the rinsole.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to take it out.
Cool. Okay. Mandy, you have your hand up. Is that from the first time or you have another question?
No, it's from the first time.
Okay. Good. Any other questions, comments? Did I miss anything in chat? Keep me scanning it. Either add a chat or put your hand up if there's any more questions. Going once. Keith. Not sure what that is. Okay, going twice. 3 times. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jane. That was very good.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it. Great information.
So if you want to stop sharing, I'll take over from here. Did that work? Can anybody see? I've lost my slides here. Just a sec.
No slides yet.
Yeah, I figured out how to do this. Hang on. How's that?
I see slides, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so
Dead people.
just a quick recap. We did a survey in June and July on your preferences for topics you'd like to cover and when and how you'd like to meet. So we had a good response. I can't remember how many we got, to tell you the truth, but we had a good response. And this is what we had so far. Any point in time, there's going to always be more comments, but this is what we found right now. Sorry. The first question was, what topics would you like to see us cover as a group? And most of them were high priority or interested. The first one we've just done, the World Athletics Shoe Rule, number 5. We may have a follow-up depending on how the guidance evolves over time. As Jane mentioned, this is a work in progress. Another high topic was a discussion of specific rules outside of Rule 5. Tips, techniques, tools, and other resources used across Canada for the start line as well as the call room. A walkthrough of the new clinics that Jennifer and Jackie have prepared. Those were all high priority. And then interested was a recap and debrief of experiences at major meets. Now that was kind of different because there was a lot of high priorities and there were some who were lukewarm. So I think it's important to do this. The key will be on how we present it. So we'll start with our next meeting, having a debrief of the Olympics. And I think that would be very interesting. And then there was question 2 was, what other topics would you like to see? And there was a wide range of really good topics. Some were I classified as common across both start line and call room. And the first one, the common topics were consistent procedures and applications of rules across Canada, best practices on prior to meet, during and after, which may be touched on in the clinics, but also could be a good topic for a future session. Updates on new rules, tools, and techniques, officiating para and masters events for our veterans on both the call room and start line, and then expectations for each level 3, 4, 5, and then difference between chiefs and referees. I mashed these two together. They were actually different comments, but I mashed them together as a common topic. And specific ones for the call room, there was a really good one on spikes and getting a sort of common understanding on spikes and what is permitted or not based on the track insurance and that type of thing. But number of times, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to how many discussions we've had over what is a Christmas tree spike. Is this a Christmas tree spike or is this not a Christmas tree spike? Those type of things. So I think that would be quite a good one. And then the last one, obviously I didn't edit correctly, but it's starters assistance topics. And that's training on procedures for the day. What signals do you use? Where do you stand? What do you say? And I suspect that'll be covered in the clinics as well, or at least we could build on what's covered in the clinics. And then some reference material, some sort of a quick reference sheet or recipe card signs of diagrams of where the start lines are and staggers for indoors and outdoors. You know, we all spend quite a bit of time trying to get oriented at the tracks, and bet you the tracks vary quite a bit, but maybe there's some common stuff that we could do to help on that front. And then a good idea, maybe a joint session between the essays on the track and the starters, maybe one session a year on topics of mutual interest. And teamwork's always key. So those are the other topics. I'll come back to those in a minute. Question 3 was, what's your preference for interacting as a group? And the common was in the red there beside it. Video conference was preferred. Conference calls, there was a low interest in that. And social media, some interest, maybe some blogs or something. So we can monitor that and see how that comes. And we'll keep asking you for thoughts on how we could use social media. But for now, we'll continue with video conference like this. And when would you prefer to meet, given we have 4 or 5 time zones across Canada? And the high preference was, just like we're doing now, weekdays, a Monday to a Friday, starting at 7 Eastern time. And then the second, by quite a drop down, was weekend, Saturday, Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And then the rest was just a wide range of things. So it looks like weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7 fits most people. And we are recording this, and we will have presentations to circulate. So if you can make that, we'll do a second best. Now, how often do you think we should meet as a group? Biggest one, 50, over half thought as necessary. And then over a third of you thought that we should do it prior, during, and after the outdoor season. And then annually, another was the follow-up, the catch-up. So put that all together and mash it together. We have the summary. We'll discuss, throwing it out for discussion. I don't think we'll have time to go through it much today, and not everybody's at the session. So we'll send this out for comment. But the discussion for the concept of meeting is we'll have a before session, during and before the season. So that would be the outdoor season sometime in February, March. We have a during and after season, which is the middle column, and then as necessary. So rules, new rules or specific rules, we cover before the season, kind of a refresher on the new ones or the hard ones. And then as necessary, just like we did today on the shoe rule. And then best practices, tips and techniques and tools across Canada. We could do before season to sort of dust the cobwebs off before we get going. And then during and after the season on kind of lessons learned or refreshers through that. And then the recap and debrief of experiences at the major meets. That could also be good topics for during and after the season. And then there'll be other topics that'll always pop up that we can sprinkle as necessary, or we could put them in conjunction with some of the other sessions that we've covered off. So those are some initial ideas. I'll come back for discussion in a minute. There's one other one I wanted to cover off, and that was, what do we want to do this year? And throwing out the idea of 3 more sessions this year, September, October, and November, with September having a recap and a debrief of major meets. And we'll have, Jane can give us some really good stories of Tokyo experience. And then we could do the Canadian Championships in Montreal, maybe some other major meets that happen between now and then. We could have one big, nice session. And then in October, we could have the walkthrough of the clinics, the new level 3 and 4. And the expectations for each level and chief versus referee. I threw it in September, but I'm not really sure of that. That may need to be a longer term throw out there. So we'll open up for ideas on that in a minute here. Officiating para and masters veterans. I threw that in for November topic. And then any other things we could think of, like a guest presentation in October or November. So those are that was kind of the starting spot for our schedule for this year, and the model for going forward, with having a sort of a pre-season February, March session to dust off the cobwebs after the winter, and then have another session during and after the season, and then as needed as things pop up. So what do you think? I know not everybody's here, so we'll have to do by email as well, but initial reactions, any thoughts?
It's Jennifer here. I've already got clearance from Jane to go through the walkthrough with the new clinics and stuff. So that's been cleared for us. I just have to check with Louise Buscus on a couple of things. So I'll try and get that solved up. But I'm happy with what you presented there, Brian. Good job. Awesome.
Okay. Catherine's got her hand up. I seem to have lost all the viewing here. So Catherine, why don't you ask a question while I try to figure out how to.
It just sort of occurred to me, like in terms of sessions or things like that, quite a few people were able to, just before Pan Ams, to get their para sort of certification, their ITO sort of thing, and wondering if there's a way that, for those of us who never got that, to be able to do that, say via Zoom or something like that.
Can I enter and answer that question?
Please.
I'm sure between David, Louise, and Dr. Jerry Clayton from Colorado, I think that can be done for you. And I think it should be done for all us essays and call room experts. So we can work on that. Great suggestion.
Excellent.
Okay. So this is awkward. I don't see any more hands up. If you do please put your hand up or type chat. Seem to have pushed the wrong button somewhere.
Why am I getting an ad for we're getting Zoom Pro?
Maybe I'm sending it to you. Maybe I'm sharing my screen. If I stop sharing my screen, will that fix it?
Yeah, you're still sharing your screen.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
There we go.
Okay.
So you're not sick of the 40-minute time limit?
No. We can stay here all night.
That was the ad.
Hey, Brian, it's Dave Keenan. I just would like to maybe offer that in Alberta, we have all of the tracks, the indoor and outdoor tracks, in a Corel draw format, which has all the markings of the track. And I was wondering if it would be of any value if some people are officiating that wanted to have their track drawn with the appropriate markings, so they know where to, instead of three turn stagger or whatever, where to line up the athletes. I'd be willing to do that for the different tracks.
Wow, that would be great.
I can show you an example just very, very quickly here, what it does look like.
How am I going to get it to you?
But no, here it is right here. You should be able to see that now, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's what we have. So, there's where the 800s start, the second arc line, one turn 800s, 3 turn 200s on an indoor track, and it has all the different colors that you line the athletes up to, brake lines, everything like that. So, and also the hurdle specification. So it's very prescriptive of what you need for that individual track. So if someone has a desire to have their track put on there, I could do that for them.
That would be an excellent spot
Yeah.
to put across Canada, all of us who have major facilities, to have that on file within Athletics Canada under NOC, that if official is going from Quebec to Alberta and they're at one of those sites, they can go print and look at it before they come and make life a lot easier. So I think that's an excellent idea. And if that can be done and everyone buys in, let's do it.
Sure. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, no, I've got your name written down. I got your name now.
You're in trouble, David.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'm here to help, right? So,
Yeah,
and there's some other
we
stuff
all are.
I can suggest later also too, but that'll be another time.
Did you say you did it in Corel Draw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice thing is it's vector graphics, so you can blow it up as big as you want without any loss of resolution.
Yeah, okay.
So
Catherine had a comment about, inside out water jumps. Yeah, that's always
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
to figure out.
And we cover that also too, like if it's inside, outside, like how many meters you have to go back every lap, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's in the notes section of that.
Mhm.
I have a question, if you're done. That's Keith. I
Okay.
noticed on the Diamond League, I think it was the London meet that just happened. there was a warning from the start referee or the starter, I'm not sure which, a yellow card warning, but it was shown by a starter's assistant. And I thought the referee would have to show that yellow card. So I thought that was an odd thing to happen. And who exactly does show? It's not the yellow and black like you would normally show to a decathlete or a heptathlete, but it just was odd. I see Jane still listening here, so maybe she's gonna explain.
Referees can only show the solid cards.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's stated in the rule book.
Well, yeah, the starters, it appeared that the starter's assistant walked over to the lane and then they didn't show it on TV and then they walked away with the yellow card in their hand. So I would say the starter's assistant actually showed it.
Okay, well, if the starter's assistant did show it, I can't explain that.
Yeah,
But Jennifer is correct. The referee, the start referee is in charge of behavior, and the starter is in charge of a false start or not. So the starter's assistant should only be showing the diagonal yellow or red.
Okay, does that answer your question, Keith, or your comment?
yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, I see Valerie has her hand up.
Yeah, just to go back to the comment about diagrams of the different tracks, could an email reminder be sent? Like, I'm very interested in that, to have a national place where we can go click to look at it, like, but it's a matter of how are we going to get all of the different tracks to get that documentation? I really don't want it just to be a good idea that's left sitting there. Like in Saskatchewan, we'd have Regina and Saskatoon would be our only indoor facilities. Are we going to ask the presidents of each province to put something together, or is there kind of a plan that could be put in place?
Yeah, plan would be a good idea. Dave, how about sorry, Jennifer, do you want to jump in on that one?
Well, I think we have to go through proper steps. We'd have to include NOC, the chair, in these requests, but we go through the branch, the presidents of each association and whoever is the chair of officials in that particular province, and get each province's A-OK. And I think it can be done. I think it should be done as well.
Some provinces may have done something like it. I don't know, but that's a good protocol procedure. Dave, did you want to wiggle out of your commitment now, or?
No. In Alberta, they're all posted on our officials website, so they're available publicly already.
And in the letter we send out, we can ask, is there a person who would like to be responsible for that province, from that province, providing this information through us to you, Dave, and we'll make this, hopefully this will come to fruition.
That'd be perfect. Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be risk of being a bit of work, but it would be great.
Oh,
I'm used to work.
Well,
Okay.
I think it might be a little onerous for Dave because I'm sure Ontario has a lot of tracks, as does Quebec, as does BC. So if you're looking at all the outdoor facilities, the indoor aren't much here, but anyway, good for you, Dave.
Well, we've already got about 30 tracks in Alberta listed already. So yeah, so they can do one at a time. So.
Good. I'm sure you can leverage a bit of them, but anyways, that'd be great. We'll get that. It's on the list here.
yep.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, I threw up on the screen saying our next meeting in September the XX. We'll throw out some dates. We'll get back to you with some dates, but it would be, as our survey said, Mondays to Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll get some date out to you in September for the next meeting. And right now we have Colin experience debriefing from Jane. We could expand that for other major meets that happened this summer, or this fall.
Well, that's not the 20th.
No, it's XX right now.
Yeah, that's what Roman numeral 20 is.
Only
Mm,
you.
I'm not that old.
Hey,
What's Roman numerals? What are they?
the numbers that wander around a lot. That's why they're Roman.
Okay, and that note, so this is the end of our session.
Brian,
Always
just,
willing to hear from
just-
you.
Brian, just a reminder that Louise Buskus and David Weicker are attending the Paralympics in Tokyo that are the last 2 weeks or they start around August 24th into September. And you might want to have their view on the call room of Paralympics as well.
For sure. Yeah. Wow. Good. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Okay.
And
So
just so
that-
you know, Brian, the Paralympics end on September the 5th, and Louise and I come back on September the 6th.
Okay. Okay.
So possibly mid-September. Give you some time to recover between, so you're ready for our next presentation. That would work.
Yeah. XX. That'd be perfect. Mhm. Okay. So we're always open for ideas, suggestions, feedback. There's some email addresses on the screen. And that was the end of our session. Before we close, any final parting comments, questions, concerns?
Thank you, Brian, for putting all this together.
Yep.
My pleasure. How am I gonna know if I gotta stop just a sec. There we go. Any more questions, comments?
No, just thank you. Have a great summer. Track is going strong in Quebec. We're working every weekend, so it's good to be back.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Agreed. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
So Brian, stay on. We'll chat.
Yeah, and